Hello, we represent the Ecuadorian project site in Cuenca, and we will be sharing our project today on the untold stories of the museums and cultural spaces within Cuenca, Ecuador for the Latin America and Caribbean Studies Project competition. I, Chris Gangos, along with my teammates Liam Casey, Lise Ranieri, and Ben Wade, are excited to share with you our project experience through the IQP program. Within Cuenca, there are 36 museums and cultural spaces that hold a variety of culture and history ranging from Incan ruins, modern art, and historical churches. Currently, the museums and cultural spaces are separate entities that lack communication amongst the others in the city, as well as with tourists and locals. Our research focused on these museums and how they've been a part of the city's identity through their arts, crafts, and historical preservation, and worked in improving their ability to share their messages better with their visitors.
During our time in Ecuador, our team worked with La Red de Museos y Espacios Culturales. La Red is a network that connects 20 museums and 16 cultural spaces throughout Azoé, the province where Cuenca is located. In our work, we focused on 7 of the museums and 3 of the cultural spaces, while working closely with Juan Fernando, an aide to the director of La Red. He helped us get in touch with the directors of all the spaces that we were focusing on and allowed us to visit each of these spaces while speaking to these directors and tour guides and really understanding the unique experiences provided by the museums and cultural spaces and the individuals working there. Everyone we spoke to was very passionate about their work and often had personal ties to each location.
To explain the background of this project, we'll first explain what cultural preservation happened. Museums perform cultural preservation, but there are 2 types of culture. There's tangible, which is things that you can touch, and intangible, which are things you can't touch. And instead, they're traditions and expressions that are taught or demonstrated through generations. Museums have not always done this as their purpose, however, as they originally began as individuals boasting personal collections, to performing education for the public, to now committed to creating community engagement between the museum, so that individuals can learn more about their community. However, there has been a recent decline in attendance due to an increased leisure industry competition, as well as new audience demographics that they're not used to. This is requiring them to reinvent strategies to gain and retain audiences, to continue receiving necessary funding to continue to keep the museums up and running.
The many museums in Cuenca boast interesting stories, not just in their exhibits housing historical artifacts that hold their own cultural values. As Elise mentioned, the people there have their own stories to tell. These stories are often locked up within the walls of these sites, only a handful of them having any sort of online presence, meaning that the public availability of all this information is not very widely spread. In fact, many don't even have any indication that they exist at all, aside from this sparse network that exists. So our goal is to take these stories and make them known, publish them, visiting these sites and gathering the information on their backgrounds, getting the contents that they house, as well as the history of the site itself. We took all this and compiled it into different narratives that will be put out into the city and put online to inform tourists and locals about the locations and inspire cultural preservation in the area.
Next, the methodology of our project. We performed 2 different ways of data collection. Firstly, we performed observations using our 5 senses to collect basic information to understand the mental and physical impact on visitors. We then conducted interviews with museum curators and employees to get a greater understanding of the museum and get stories that aren't typically told to the public. This information was compiled into a guidebook for users to know what each space has to offer and to give them a deeper understanding of each museum.
Now moving into our results. Using the information that we collected from our observations and interviews, we were able to craft biographies about each space that provided important information such as location and hours of operation, but also described the unique history and stories that we learned while we visited each of these spaces and talked to the people that work there. We were also able to include pictures taken by our group members, and the final guidebook was created in English and Spanish with a printable and digital format for La Red to publish. Looking at this slide, we have included a sample of the biography that we created for El Museo del Sombrero Paja Tequila, or the Panama Hat Museum. On the first page, we have a general location and contact information, as well as rankings of accessibility, family friendliness, need for a guide, and average visit duration. On the second page, we outline some of the information and unique histories of each location, particularly the family history of 120 years in the business, the importance of the Panama hat industry to Ecuador's culture, and the demonstrations of the handmade hat making process that were given during our visit. It is our hope that these added stories paired with accessibility ratings and museum information will appeal to visitors locally and globally. And in addition to helping visitation, we hope that these profiles will help communicate the importance of these spaces to the rich history and culture of Cuenca.
At the conclusion of our project, the following recommendations were made to strengthen the impact of our project and our guidebook through its activation and our sponsor, or to enhance further projects that build on our guidebook. First of which was connecting to other community organizations around Cuenca that work with the museums that may have uncovered more details or connections that could have placed our project into a larger space to be broadcasted. Second off was the utilization of and development of the social media pages of these museums and cultural spaces. As the world becomes more digitized and further people move to find information on the internet, modern tourists are looking for more information online than in a physical guidebook. And through the developing these digital presences, the potential for greater visitation will increase. Lastly, looking back on our project and the lessons we've learned, the two that stood out the most were first the accommodation of local culture, and secondly was the recognition of the stakeholders involved. Looking at accommodating culture, as the customs of Ecuador were more based face-to-face meetings, where we were used to online scheduling through email and text messaging, we had to adapt and to learn these local customs in order to uncover the rich histories that these museums and cultural spaces had to offer. Secondly, through looking at the stakeholders involved, we effectively synthesized these summaries of these museums, but further analysis on who the stakeholders were for this project could have increased its value, such as communicating with the Cuenca Tourism Bureau or other community organizations in order to broadcast our project to a greater audience. We hope you enjoyed our presentation on the untold stories of museums and cultural spaces within Ecuador. And we'd like to thank you and open it up for questions.